Former State Senator Mike Johnston announced today for governor. Congratulations, first big name in the race.
Thank you.
Welcome to Next. So first question seems like a softball, but it undid Ted Kennedy in 1980. Some variation of, why do you want to be governor?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're at a time in Colorado where there are big problems to be solved, and to solve those is going to require someone with big and bold ideas and with a track record of being able to bridge divides to get results and to build opportunity for folks. I think I have that track record both as a school principal, as a small business owner, and certainly in my work in the legislature. And so I feel like this is a time where we'll need big vision and the ability to cross divides to solve problems, and I think I can do that.
What strikes you as the single largest problem facing our state?
I think the single largest problem facing our state is how we're going to keep up with the rapidly changing economy, which is how do we make sure that folks are able to upskill and reskill to get prepared as industries and economy changes overnight. And so I think it's some of the frustration and the fear we've seen around the state is what happens if the industry that my grandfather was in and my father was in and I'm in disappears, and how do I start over from there? And so I think a lot of this is how do we get ahead of this old economy into a new economy where we can have people prepare and improve their skills flexibly as the economy changes.
So that's a jobs issue, that's an education issue.
It is.
Campaign kickoff speeches are typically not where you lay out policy in depth,
Yep.
but I did hear one prescription, which was the idea of 2 years of debt-free college or job training for every Coloradan, presumably regardless of age, adults and so forth. I didn't hear you say how we were going to pay for it.
So the reason why this is important is obviously the nature of this changing economy is people aren't going to be able to get a degree when they're 18 anymore and be prepared for the next 50 years of the economy. They're going to have to, at 25 and 35 and 45, develop new skills for new professions. And I think if we can have that training in place, it solves some of the anxiety and disruption you feel from being out of work and out of opportunity. Well, the key about this proposal is we're talking about it being debt-free, which means folks that can pay will pay, but those that need to acquire debt will be able to finance that by providing meaningful service to the state. And so the idea here is that these people would be engaged in almost like a civilian service corps, which would enable them to provide ongoing service to the state that saves the state dollars and prevents long-term state costs in the way that you think about almost like a National Guard does, which is we're not saying you're a full-time Marine, we're saying you have your day job 5 days a week, but you come 4 or 5 weekends a year to support the state, and when the state needs you in times of crisis, whether it's to help with floods in Lyons or with fires in Waldo Canyon, those people can be called up into service for the state. So we think that's a proposal that actually invests in people and invests in the state and saves us money on both sides.
Roughly speaking, where would you draw the line in terms of who can pay? Sliding scale?
Yeah, I think it'd be a sliding scale for us to determine who has the capacity and who would have to take on debt to do it.
Gotcha. So some politicians get elected because they tell people what they want to hear. Some go against the grain and tell people what they need to hear. Yeah. What is it that Coloradans need to hear but they don't want to hear?
I think the things that we need to hear is that the rapid changes of automation and globalization are going to affect all of our industries, maybe even yours and mine, Kyle. But I think we've seen a lot of the manufacturers and employers and coal mines and others who have seen big disruption to their economies. And yes, that's coming for truck drivers and others, but I think it's also coming to all of our professions, which means there is going to be rapid change that's going to not slow down but accelerate, and we have to be prepared to build a workforce development plan and an economic plan that gets us ahead of this and not leaves us dragging behind an economy we can't keep up with. So I think there is more and real disruption coming to the economies and the industries that we've known, and we're going to have to get ahead of that.
Would our state be better off without the Taxpayer Bill of Rights?
I think that there are real challenges to Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, which is we know that people don't want to have roads with potholes or bridges that are falling down or for college to be unaffordable or for class sizes to be 35. So there are challenges to solve. I think there are parts of it that make sense. People believe that the ability for Coloradans to have a say in their own tax policy has become, I think, part of the Colorado identity. But I think people are also fundamentally problem solvers in Colorado, which is if they see a problem, they want to be able to fix it. And so I think we have a series of constitutional overlapping amendments that are a problem now that require some fixing. I think people have a sense of that, and they want a pragmatic solution.
As you head into what's likely to be a crowded Democratic primary, one thing the Democrats everywhere in the country are talking about is how to work with or not President-elect Trump. Yep. At the end of your kickoff speech, I heard you say, we won't stand by and let this happen and this happen and this happen and this happen. So it sounds to me like you're not in the collaborate camp, you're in the resist camp.
I'm in the belief that we'll collaborate with anybody who wants to help build opportunity for Coloradans. And so if there are initiatives that he wants to push that are going to help make college affordable for Coloradans or make or make our schools better, or make our roads more safe, or make our healthcare system better, I'd be happy to support those. If he has proposals that are going to divide Coloradans and deny them services and deny them supports, I wouldn't support those. But I think I'm going to give the president-elect the chance to lead on the things that he makes a priority, and I'll determine, based on how much opportunity they create for our neighbors, if I'll support them or oppose them.
You've been generous with your time. I have 2 more questions.
Not at all.
What is the biggest thing left undone by Governor Hickenlooper's administration?
I mean, I think Governor Hickenlooper was the perfect leader for the perfect time. He helped Colorado make its way out of the recession. He helped us be the first to recover from the economy, and we've grown through what's been a very tough time for other states. I think the now question is, what is the leadership for the next generation of where Colorado needs to go from here? And so I think things that are undone include, how do we build a world-class education system and a world-class economic development program that helps people improve and develop their skills? How do we solve the infrastructure challenges that exist around not just transportation, but water? And how do we build an energy system for the next 25 years that will give us the power we need at a price that we can afford with values that we share? And so I think those are the big 3 left for us to tackle. But I also think bigger than that is going to be, what does the next governor do to really build a Colorado sense of identity about what politics means and what it's meant to do, which is, I don't think that we are by nature a divisive or a disagreeable state. We're kind of problem solvers who like to get things done. But also I think people want a big vision for where the state's going to go and how we get there. So I think those are the big tasks that remain, is can we build a big vision with bold ideas, and can that include a plan to bridge divides and build opportunity for all Coloradans? And I think that's possible.
Okay, so now you're forcing me to ask another question. I've still got
Sure.
one last one. When you talk about the idea of a Colorado political identity that's not as partisan and not as divisive and that sort of thing, you're not likely to be the most moderate Democrat in the race.
I mean, obviously, I don't know who else is going to be in the race. I think if you look at my track record, I have a history of really bridging divides on all sides, whether it's bridging divides with local communities as the head of this community office here, the only legislator to have a community office, whether it is working with Republicans on tax policy, whether it's working with very progressive Democrats on immigration or criminal justice reform. So I think I've been able to cross all of those typical divides that separate us within each party and across the parties. And I think if you ask folks at the Capitol or at the small business that I've run or in the community center that we host, they'd say the same thing.
You talked repeatedly today about big, bold ideas that cross the divide.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest and boldest idea, for which you're probably best known statewide, is Amendment 66, which is a nearly $1 billion tax increase to pay for educational improvements. Taxpayers rejected that by a 2-to-1 margin. Yeah. Too big, too bold, or was it a bad idea?
I mean, so as a teacher and a principal in Colorado, I knew the consequences of having schools that were under-resourced and students that were fighting to get ahead without the supports they needed to do it. And so we knew we had a problem we had to solve, which is schools don't have the resources they need. We put together a plan to try to solve that problem, and we took it to the voters, and the voters said they didn't want it. So what we did was we heard that feedback and went back to work. The next legislative session, I passed almost $400 million investment by doing what voters asked, take the resources you can find from the revenue we have to do it. We found new and creative ways to fund early childhood education that didn't require either new taxes or cutting other budgets. And we found ways to put in much needed reforms to make sure taxpayers knew where that money went, because they said we want to know what results we're getting for the dollars we've put in. So we listened, and we created the first state in the country where we'll have the kind of transparency where every parent can know where every dollar is spent at her child's school. And so I think we tried to solve what was a big problem. The voters said that wasn't the right solution, so we listened to them and found some new solutions.
Mike Johnston, thank you so much for your time. First notable name into the governor's race. It's a long race, so we'll both pace ourselves.
I'll look forward to it.
All right.
Thanks for coming out here.
Appreciate it very much.
Good to see you. I really appreciate you spending the time.